Bananas might seem like the ultimate feel-good fruit, packed with energy, rich in potassium, and a go-to snack before workouts. They're low in calories, easy to eat on the go, and universally loved. But behind their bright yellow peel lies a surprisingly dark history. From being entangled in racist symbolism to triggering deadly diseases and even being linked to multiple deaths, bananas have a twisted backstory that most people have never heard. To borrow a phrase from Gwen Stefani, the history of bananas is truly bananas. Here are 10 unsettling stories you probably never knew about this everyday fruit. Hangman in Calcutta. A veteran hangman in Calcutta, Nata Mullik, was responsible for hanging 25 people over a period of 65 years. These executions in India were made up of people who had committed rape, murder, and other atrocious acts. He claimed to have a passion for his career that he was practically born into. His father was a hangman and executed more than 600 men during his career. Mullik also taught the trade to his grandson, who decided to continue the family business. Mullik said there is an art of tying a perfect noose, and a hangman must also mentally prepare for the execution. He has no problem with either of those, but he has one secret that he believes helps with the hangings: bananas. He claimed that a rope needed to be slippery for a good hanging, and he used mashed bananas and oil to lubricate the rope. Cheap fuel for slaves. Bananas weren't always the star cash crop they are today. When they first arrived in the Americas, they were mostly grown in the shadows, literally. On many colonial plantations, banana trees were planted to provide shade for more profitable crops like cacao, coffee, and sugarcane. Their broad leaves helped cool the soil, and their presence seemed almost secondary until plantation owners realized their hidden value. As the transatlantic slave trade expanded, enslaved Africans were forced into backbreaking labor under brutal conditions. Food was often scarce and nutritionally poor, but bananas, with their natural sugars and high potassium content, offered a cheap, energy-packed option. Plantation owners began feeding bananas to enslaved workers, not out of concern for their health, but as a way to maximize output at minimal cost. They became what you could call a biological fuel, a calorie-dense food to keep laborers on their feet and in the fields longer. This practice wasn't about nourishment, it was about efficiency. In this context, bananas weren't seen as fruit, but as expendable fuel for expendable people, a dark and dehumanizing chapter in the fruit's history that's rarely acknowledged today. Banana Massacre. In November 1928, workers at the United Fruit Company, now known as Chiquita, went on strike until the company agreed to provide them with dignified working conditions. The company refused to meet the workers' demands for several weeks. The president of Colombia, Miguel Mendez, labeled the workers' strike as communist, and he decided to side with the United Fruit Company. On December 5th, Mendez sent 700 men from the Colombian army to put an end to the strike. Around 1,500 banana workers were gathered with their families in the town square that day, while the troops were setting up machine guns on the roofs of nearby buildings. The troops gave the workers a 5-minute warning to leave the area before they opened fire on the large crowd. The number of deaths from the banana massacre is still unknown, but the number could be as high as 2,000. Pesticide exposure. Workers at a banana plantation in Kampong Cham began fleeing to their home provinces in 2022 after being exposed to pesticides. Workers started fainting regularly and felt dizzy while working, which eventually led to mass hospitalizations. They were told by their superiors that their symptoms were a sign of laziness, but then 3 people died. More than 200 workers experienced symptoms, and 66 others were hospitalized after experiencing trouble breathing, nausea, blurred vision, and chest pains. It is believed that exposure to pesticides near the on-site dormitories caused the symptoms. Workers were temporarily suspended while an investigation was conducted, but several employees left their jobs to search for new employment. Health officials blamed tainted alcohol and believed the workers were drinking wine that contained an extremely high amount of methanol. They contain radioactive isotopes. A small fraction of all potassium is radioactive, and bananas have high levels of potassium. This means that bananas technically contain radioactive isotopes, even though they carry only a small amount of radiation. Consuming one banana would only deliver a dose of 0.01 millirem of radiation. So, how many bananas would you need to eat for it to be harmful? It would take about 50 bananas to reach the same radiation as a dental X-ray, and about 1,000 to reach the exposure of a chest X-ray. It would take more than 50 million bananas to reach a lethal radiation dose. That is quite a lot of bananas to consume in one sitting. Death from slipping on banana peel. Slipping on a banana peel is a classic accident seen in cartoons or even in the popular video game Mario Kart. Is it possible to actually slip on a banana peel though? Not only is it possible, but it can apparently cause injury and even death in some cases. There have been several cases of people slipping on banana peels on a city sidewalk, which led to broken bones and other injuries. New York once had a problem with people throwing trash on the ground, including banana peels. In 1884, the New York Times published an article about a 75-year-old wealthy merchant who slipped on a banana peel in front of his home, and he was not expected to recover. The New York Times published another article in 1920 with the headline, "Banana Peel Causes Death." A boy fell onto the road after slipping on a banana peel, where a truck then hit him. Stealing bananas leads to death. Jarrell Garris was walking through a grocery store when an employee called the police on him. He was accused of eating a banana and some grapes and then leaving without paying for the fruit. The 37-year-old was approached by two officers who asked him if he had stolen the food. Garris did not respond to the officers and walked away. One officer told him that the grocery store was pressing charges and attempted to place Garris under arrest. He resisted the arrest, which led to a struggle. Authorities then believed that he reached for one of their guns, which led to one of the police officers firing his weapon at Garris. He was shot in the neck, which caused damage to his spinal cord and cervical spine. He died about a week later after being removed from life support. Panama disease. In the 1950s, the banana industry was decimated by Panama disease, a disease caused by a soil-inhabiting fungus. Since the disease is extremely difficult to control, it led to one of the worst botanical epidemics we may ever see. Panama disease wiped out the Gros Michel variety of bananas, which meant a new variety would need to emerge. In the 1960s, the Cavendish variety showed signs of resistance to the disease, and it would be the banana to save the industry. A new strain of Panama disease, TR4, emerged in Asia in the 1990s and is lethal to Cavendish bananas. TR4 arrived in Colombia in 2019, which was the first appearance of this strain in the Americas. Farmers are now growing different varieties of bananas to help create a diverse farming system that will be more resilient to the disease. The banana truck crash. Harry Chapin released a song in 1974 called 30,000 Pounds of Bananas, but the folk rock song was based on an actual event. In 1965, Eugene Seski was working on delivering a large load of bananas to Scranton, Pennsylvania. He was headed down Route 307, which contained a 2-mile descent. While driving down the large hill, Seski lost control of the semi-truck. When he reached the bottom of the descent, the truck was moving at approximately 90 miles per hour, 144.8 kilometers per hour, where it sideswiped several cars before crashing into a home. The truck turned over, Seski was ejected and killed, and bananas were scattered everywhere. 15 others were injured in the accident, but Seski was credited with skillful driving to prevent other deaths from happening. The CIA and banana republics. In the early 1950s, a silent war was waged, not over territory or ideology, but over bananas. At the heart of the conflict was the United Fruit Company, UFC, a powerful American corporation that controlled vast stretches of farmland in Central America. One of its most lucrative holdings was in Guatemala, where the company owned railroads, ports, and hundreds of thousands of acres of banana plantations. But trouble came in the form of President Jacobo Arbenz, a reformist leader who sought to redistribute unused land to landless peasants. This agrarian reform was wildly popular with Guatemalans, but it directly threatened United Fruit's dominance. Fearing the loss of its empire, UFC lobbied the US government, branding Arbenz as a dangerous communist, despite no solid evidence. Under Cold War paranoia and with corporate influence at play, the CIA launched Operation PB Success in 1954, a covert mission to overthrow Arbenz. The agency trained and armed a rebel force, deployed psychological warfare, and even used radio broadcasts to spread propaganda. The coup was successful. Arbenz was ousted and a military regime took power, one that was far more friendly to US business interests, but the consequences were catastrophic. The coup plunged Guatemala into decades of brutal dictatorship, civil war, and human rights atrocities. Over 200,000 people would die in the conflict that followed, many of them indigenous civilians, all of it essentially to protect banana profits and the corporate empire of a single American fruit company. This event didn't just reshape Guatemala, it helped coin the term Banana Republic, a country whose economy and politics are dominated and manipulated by foreign business interests. It remains one of the darkest examples of how fruit, politics, and power can collide, with devastating results. The Dole banana lawsuit. In the early 2000s, a shocking legal battle erupted when hundreds of plantation workers from Nicaragua filed lawsuits against the Dole Food Company and Dow Chemical. The workers alleged that they had been exposed to a highly toxic pesticide called DBCP, dibromachloropropane, a chemical already banned in the United States since the late 1970s due to its proven link to male sterility, hormone disruption, and reproductive damage. Despite the ban at home, the pesticide was still being used on banana plantations abroad, where safety regulations were far looser. The workers claimed that they were not informed of the dangers, were not given proper protective equipment, and were made to work in fields recently sprayed with the chemical. The lawsuit brought international attention to the double standard in environmental safety and the exploitation of labor in the global banana industry. However, the case became deeply controversial. Dole accused the plaintiffs of fraud, claiming that many of the testimonies were fabricated and that lawyers had coached or bribed witnesses. A California judge eventually dismissed some of the cases, citing lack of credible evidence and misconduct. Still, the scandal highlighted the murky ethics of agricultural practices, especially in developing nations, and raised awareness about the hidden human cost behind cheap supermarket bananas. Banana boat infestations. While bananas might seem harmless, they've occasionally come with a hidden, horrifying surprise: deadly stowaways. Every year, reports surface of banana shipments arriving in stores infested with Brazilian wandering spiders, Phenutria, one of the most venomous and aggressive spiders in the world. Native to South America, these spiders are notorious for their painful bite, which can cause paralysis, respiratory issues, and in rare cases, death. Supermarket workers and shoppers in countries like the UK, Germany, and the US have opened banana boxes only to find live spiders crawling inside or hidden within the fruit clusters. In some cases, entire stores have been evacuated and closed temporarily as pest control teams were called in. The fear surrounding these incidents has led to consumer paranoia, lawsuits, and millions in losses for banana suppliers. Though such occurrences are rare, they underscore how global food chains can carry biological hazards across continents. For banana importers, it's not just a matter of freshness and price, it's also about making sure your fruit isn't carrying something that could literally bite. The banana tycoon who created a dictatorship. Sam Zemurray wasn't just a fruit mogul, he was a kingmaker. The founder of the Cuyamel Fruit Company, Zemurray didn't hesitate to use political manipulation to protect and expand his banana empire. In 1911, when the Honduran government threatened his business interests with tax reforms and land disputes, Zemurray orchestrated a coup d'etat to install a president who would favor American corporate control. With the help of mercenaries and political insiders, Zemurray successfully overthrew the Honduran government, placing a compliant leader in power. This act of corporate-sponsored regime change wasn't just audacious, it set a chilling precedent for how fruit companies like United Fruit, which later absorbed Cuyamel, operated in Central America. These corporations didn't just grow bananas, they controlled governments, shaped economies, and suppressed resistance. Zemurray eventually became a top executive at United Fruit and was widely referred to as the Banana King. His legacy is one of power cloaked in produce, a man who proved that bananas could be as influential as bullets when backed by money and ambition.